What's up, everybody? It's Scotty here with Flat Track Flashback, and it's officially American Flat Track Race Week again. The series is set to recommence with round 6 of the Progressive American Flat Track Series for this year, and they're heading to Wheatland, Missouri, and Lucas Oil Speedway. And this is an awesome facility hosting late model races, sprint car races, huge grandstands, little paper clippy track, 3/8 mile. They're calling it a short track, but I feel like it's going to behave a lot like some of these car tracks we see on the East Coast. And I think we're in for an exciting night of racing there when the series heads to Missouri. So they're back at it. But before we get into our preview show, talking about the racing going on at Lucas Oil for AFT, there's a few things that happened over the weekend that I want to touch on. Some flat track, some Moto America. You know, my Speedway GP fandom is going to shine through as well. So let's touch base on that, and then we'll look ahead to round 6 of the American Flat Track season. Now, look, there was a ton of racing that was going on over the weekend. We saw action for RPM up in Michigan. There was a race in Peoria. We had action going on the East Coast. We're not going to be able to hit all this stuff, but there's a couple things I want to focus on, and unfortunately, weather impacted both of them. The Lee Thomas Cup at Square Deals Raceway had to be canceled, and rain nearly took out the entire Dairyland Classic. Seeing photos and social media videos throughout that night, those pits were just drenched, and I'm shocked that they were able to get anything done at all. It looks like qualifying was complete, and they were able to get a pro main event and dash for cash in for the expert riders who were in attendance. Bummer for the amateurs and hooligans, but I believe that's all they could, manage to get done on that night. So a lot of top riders in attendance, a lot of good professional riders. We saw Jared Mees break out a single and show up, so he was back in the mix. And on this night, we would see a first-time Dairyland Classic winner, and that would be Davis Fisher, who was able to break through for the expert victory. He was able to take the lead from Tom Drain. Drain led a few laps of that main event, but Fisher would be able to take the victory by just over 0.2 of a second. Chase Sadoff would round out the podium there, finishing third. Trent Lowe fourth, and as we mentioned, Jared Mees in the house. Weird seeing the number 9 there on a single. We're so used to seeing Jared on number 1 on a twin, but Mees brings up the top 5 there, and I'm excited to hear Scotty Dubler's breakdown of this event. He was in the house there in Wisconsin for the Dairyland Classic. Unfortunate we didn't get a full program in, but glad that the experts were able to burn some laps there. And from a couple of things that I've read, it sounds like after the rain, when they were able to give them something to, get a couple of races on there at the end of the night, it sounds like the track was really good. So curious to hear Scotty's insight on that. As we mentioned, Davis Fisher getting the better of Tom Drain in the expert main event, which took the top 12 fastest qualifiers from earlier in the day. Now, the Jim Sumner Memorial Dash for Cash would take the top 6 fastest qualifiers for a little shootout there, and it would be an Australian 1-2 with Max Whale and Tom Drain leading laps in that race, but Drain would ultimately come home the victor in that. So Tom Drain picks up the victory in the Dash for Cash over Max Whale, and Chad Coast brings home a 3rd place. Tom Drain, not the only Drain to find success on the weekend there in Wisconsin. As we know, the Dairyland Classic taking place the Friday night of the same weekend that Moto America visits Road America. And that track, man, Road America is an incredible facility to watch racing at. I've never personally gotten to go, but was very entertained by all the racing that Moto America delivered on the weekend. If you get a chance to go back and see those highlights, I highly recommend you do so. We're not going to touch on every class. I just want to focus more so on the Talent Cup for the weekend and the rising star flat trackers that are mixing it up in that class. Now, we've got flat trackers throughout the Moto America paddock. You've got riders like Kyle Wyman and James Rispoli, just to name a couple, who are in the baggers class that have spent time on the dirt. Tyler Scott and PJ Jacobson, just a couple that are in the super sport class. Of course, JD Beach is back there running stock 1000s and the superbike class, and that's just to name a couple of riders who have mixed it up on the dirt. But yeah, please go back and look at those highlights from Road America with Moto America. We're going to hit the high notes of the Talent Cup class now, and it was Sam Drain and Bodie Page and Alessandro DiMario that pulled away there in race 1. There was a scary crash early on with Carson King, Derek Sanchez, and Hank Vosberg that really sort of split the pack up, and thankfully those riders would all be okay, but very scary moment there in race 1 for the Talent Cup. But the 3-rider breakaway, Drain, Page, and DiMario, who've sort of separated themselves in that class and really seem to be the standouts on the season, would have a battle during that first race. Bodie would be leading coming out of the final corner there, and thought he had enough of a gap to hold off everybody, but Sam Drain's able to get in the draft, and Drain passes Bodie Page there at the line. Almost a photo finish there. Page and Drain and DeMario. That sees Sam Drain get his first victory of the year. And those 3 riders would have some extra company on the second day. Another early race crash would actually shorten this event. The second race would only be a 5-lap shootout. And it looked like Drain and DeMario and Julian Correa would be the breakaway in this one, but Bodie Page was able to get up there in the mix. And then Carson King and Cody Kopp closed in on that lead pack, and we had 6 riders all vying for that win there on the last lap. And even Hank Vosberg was able to catch up there late. Who knows what another lap could have meant for him in that second Talent Cup race. Similar story though. The rider leading out of the final corner would not be the victor. Julian Correa would have the lead coming off the final corner, leading up to that long front straightaway there at Road America, but he would get drafted by Alessandro DeMario, and DeMario picks up another win on the season in the Talent Cup ahead of Correa. Sam Drain would slot into third in this race, and then Bodie Page, Carson King, Cody Kopp bringing home the top 6 there with Vosberg on the back end of that lead group. But man, just incredible racing throughout the Talent Cup on the weekend, and really exciting to see Cody Kopp getting more comfortable and being up in that lead pack. Just so fun to follow this particular class, and the racing was incredible with them, all weekend. It's reminiscing, especially that second day. It reminded me of what you get to see in Moto 3 there in Europe, when there's just so many riders in a pack vying for the win there late in the race, and it's all up for grabs. And tracks like Road America with those long straightaways leading up to the start-finish line, that uphill and getting in the draft, man, just provided for some incredible finishes on the weekend. So congrats to Sam for his breakthrough win there, and man, DeMario just looking like the ace of the field for the most part, stretching out his point lead in that class as the series moves forward. All right, so this is where I talk about Speedway GP. I would advise you not fast forward, but if you're not interested, so be it, whatever. Round 3 of the Speedway Grand Prix series was in the Czech Republic, and Brady Kurtz, this would be the first time that the young Australian would have a struggle on the weekend. He was the point leader coming in, but he would struggle through his heat races, needing a victory in his final round just to make it into an LCQ. Now, Bartosz Marzlik and Freddie Lindgren, they were strong throughout the day, and they were able to get those automatic bids into the final. And Speedway GP sort of switched up their format, where the top 2 points earners from the 5 heat race runs get to lock into the final without having to run those semifinal races as they have in the past. The semifinals now become last chance qualifiers, with just the winner advancing out of those 2 races to join the top 2 points earners in the final. So Kurtz would end up having to run one of those last chance races, and it looked like he was going to make a miracle comeback happen in his final 2 rides, leading the race. But unfortunately, an issue with the chain as he's getting passed during that race by Leon Madsen. And Leon Madsen, a former regular of the series, was actually filling in as a wild card on the weekend. Madsen gets by Kurtz. Kurtz has a violent crash. Fortunately, he would be okay, but Madsen would take the victory in that last chance and join Smarzlik and Lindgren. And then the second last chance would go to the prior round winner, Jack Holder, setting up the final event there in the Czech Republic. And no Martin Vashalik in the final this year. Vashalik had won that event a couple years in a row, but unfortunately not able to continue his winning streak there in the Czech Republic. And in that final, Smarzlik and Lindgren would get out front early, both of them having moments up against the wall in the backstretch on the opening lap, and those 2 just running a much higher line, just sailing it around that little speedway. It looked like Madsen and Holder a little bit lower on the line. Madsen trying to make that inside line work, but just couldn't do it. And Smarzlik would end up pulling away, have a pretty comfortable gap. Madsen and Lindgren would exchange second a couple of times on the last lap, but Bartosz Smarzlik gets his second win of the year, retakes the point lead, and Lindgren would get the better of that duel with Madsen on the final lap to come home second. But yeah, so much fun to watch Speedway Grand Prix this year, and Smarzlik just puts on a show every time he's out on the track. But fun little battle there. Smarzlik now an 8-point advantage over Brady Kurtz in the GP standings, with Jack Holder right there in third. And this battle is going to be fun to watch all year. I feel like Smarzlik might run away with another championship. I believe that was his 28th Grand Prix win in his career. So racking up the tally there. He's just been the most dominant guy in that circuit for the last few years. But even with his dominance, you just never know. And it's just so fun to watch the way he rides. He and Lindgren had quite a duel in one of those final heat races as well. And I expect more battles from them throughout the rest of the year. So like we said, there was a lot of racing that happened over the weekend, a lot of local races. We're not going to go deep dive into it. Just a couple highlights that I saw. Pretty good battle with Billy Ross and Cody Michie at one of the RPM races in Michigan over the weekend. Fun to watch Cody Mishi right now. He is on a roll at these RPM events. Had strong runs there in the Corey Texter Promotions Mission Food Series in Ohio recently. He could be one of those riders that is going to be one to watch when Amateur Nationals rolls around here in just over a month up in DuQuoin. Just a really strong summer that he's got cooking up there. That's Cody Mishi. Also saw that District 6 had a couple races going on, watching videos from Frank on YouTube. Saw Bromley was up there at Pagoda, and it looked like Adam Budman Wood was the big winner on the day there for at least the pro classes. Looked like they had a pretty solid turnout of riders there throughout the field. So if you get a chance, check out Frank's video from Pagoda. You can see all the racing that took place over there over the weekend. We also had a bunch of pros in the house. District 17 holding a race at the Peoria TT, and a pretty good field of riders there. I got to see a couple of clips of Dallas and Breyer and a couple of top amateurs in the region. Also looked like Drain was there, and I believe I saw Chase Sadoff was in the house as well. So good opportunity for some pros to get laps there at the TT before the National takes place over the summer, just like they did back at DuQuoin for RPM back in April. Also saw, I think, Henry Wiles on something a little different. Maybe you guys have seen photos or videos circulating around social media. Somebody shared a Facebook post to me. I'm not on Facebook, so I didn't get to watch any of the Facebook Lives from there. But saw an interesting clip from a friend of mine whose response was, "What am I looking at here?" And I wish I had an answer because I'm not entirely sure. It looked like maybe Henry did like I used to do when I was playing Grand Theft Auto and just hijacked a street bike and then showed up at one of the races you could do for money in the video game. And not sure how he did. Haven't seen results from that yet, but did get to see a lot of pros in the house there. We did say we were going to look ahead to Lucas Oil, and we're going to do just that. Starting with the Twins class, because quite frankly, it's just a little bit easier to dissect at this point. Going into Lucas Oil, 3/8 mile clay car track, I'd have to say that just because of the streak that he's been on and the way this track is shaped, I have to give the edge to Breyer Bauman on the weekend, and I think he's going to continue his hot streak right now. Things just really looking good for that team and for Breyer this year. And Breyer was so good on the Indian on some of these paperclip tracks. And even though Lucas Oil is a more condensed version of that, it's not like, your Williams Grove or, Breyer ran his KTM twin and then a 450 single at Hagerstown for Corey's races a couple of years when he was doing those. I just feel like Breyer is just in a great place right now and just has been so strong on a lot of these clay car tracks. And I just think he's the guy to beat right now. I feel like Dallas Daniels is probably going to be the runner-up there. I feel like if you were doing over-under betting positions, you'd set Breyers at 1.5 and Dallas at 2.5, and you can take the over-under as you wish on those if we were doing an odds show. But those two guys have just been, they've been a step above everybody else. As we've talked about, there's sort of these tiers that have sort of happened with the Twins class lately, and you've got Breyer and Dallas separating themselves into championship contenders. And then that second tier of Jared Vanderkooi, Davis Fisher, Brandon Robinson have sort of filled out that who's going to be the third guy on the podium battle as they quest for, that third through fifth spot in the points. And, all three of those could play a factor. We saw how strong every single one of them was at Sonoy. Would not be surprised to see those guys, once again vying for second or third on the podium and see how that shakes out. But I feel like this is a track that Breyer is going to be really, really strong at, and we'll just see how Brandon and Jared and Davis Fisher settle in. Brandon still looking for that. Just looking for a little more consistency. He's been on the podium once, been in the top 5 a couple of times, but does have those 2 6th place finishes. This could be a track that could play to some of his strengths from growing up in Pennsylvania. Brandon might be my favorite to take home that extra spot on the podium, but we'll see how that plays out as we come into Lucas Oil Speedway. Behind them, you never know what's going to happen with the rest of the top 5. James Ott was able to break through and lead some laps. Maybe he continues to carry that momentum forward and shines again. He ran really well in Sonoy. Trent Lowe ran really well in Sonoy. Again, I'm using those as just sort of the size-wise of the track, but I don't think they're going to race the same. But those guys have been fun to watch as the rookies on the year, and they could be up there mixing it up for a potential podium or top 5, and then the rest of that sort of mixture of that third tier of Max Whale and Dan Bromley will be interesting to see where they slot in. There's a couple of storylines obviously coming into this. A couple of riders who are going to be making their first twin start of the year. One of which is going to be Declan Bender, who is going to be filling in for Brandon Price as Brandon Price, stepping away from racing in the bummed to see that because Brandon's been a really fun rider to watch throughout his career. We've gotten to see him in the amateur ranks coming up in Pennsylvania, and then got to watch his progression through the singles class, and had some great battles in the twins class. An epic duel with Jared Mees in Georgia, and then another great battle with Briar Bauman up in Port Royal. Unfortunately, Brandon would come home second in those events, but still put together some amazing rides. He dominated Frederick for a couple of years, and just a lot of injuries for Brandon. He's had a tough year, couple of big crashes this year, especially. But Brandon is one of those guys that was really, really promising coming up and has put together a strong career. And it's just good that he's able to step away with with his health intact and just make a decision for his future. So we're going to miss seeing Brandon at the racetrack, but we wish him all the best in these next chapters of life. And with that, the on the box team, that Yamaha team is going to bring in Declan Bender. And Declan, as the super sub for the First Impressions team back in Georgia, came home sixth. He was really quick out there in Chico early in the day on the 450, and brought home a solid finish out there. And now hopping on a twin, and it was interesting to look back at Brandon Price's first year in the Super Twins class aboard an Indian, and Declan Bender's rookie season last year when he hopped on an Indian. And they're pretty similar numbers. Brandon Price had a better best finish with that second place in his 2019 season, whereas Declan's best finish in his rookie twins year was that fourth. But both of those finishes coming on car tracks, with Declan getting that fourth place in Rapid City and Brandon Price picking up that runner-up spot in Williams Grove. But similar stats. They both had an average finish of 10th. Those are numbers comparing them to riding the Indians versus this Yamaha, where Declan is going to be stepping onto a Yamaha twin this time, and Price had a good run last year in those things. We saw how he was right up there in the front in DuQuoin, put together a podium ride there, had that strong run back in Daytona early last year. Things didn't quite click this year, and then again the bad crash that second night in Daytona, and bad crash out there in California as well. Just a bummer for that, but it will be interesting to see where Declan slots in, hopping on a Yamaha here in Lucas Oil. I think it's a great track for him to debut at. I feel like a clay car track or a mile are great places for Declan to slot in here in his first twin start. And it's just great to see him pick up a ride for the rest of the year, and he'll be a factor in the twins class moving forward. Also, pre-entered on a Yamaha, how about the return of Bronson Bauman? And we're excited to have Bronson back at the track. He's a guy who I feel like could slot right into a fight for a top 5 finish. Then again, maybe not. Maybe he ends up in that third tier racing for sixth on back. But we're grateful to see Bronson's got a ride, and that he's going to be back at the racetrack this weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing his performance. His season really seemed like it was picking up last year before that injury when he was racing with the Fast Track KTM. But we'll see how Bronson slots in here with the Yamaha, and just adding another big name to the twins class, and another exciting rider to follow along as we move into Lucas Oil Speedway. Now, switching gears to the singles class. I have no clue who to say would be the favorite at this racetrack, because quite frankly, I think there's maybe 9 riders who could come home the victor at Lucas Oil. You're obviously looking at Tom Drain, Chase Sadoff, Trevor Bruner, the top 3 in points. Those guys seem to be separating themselves into the title battle, but of those 3, Chase is the only one to have a victory on the season. So is Bruner going to be able to break through? He was able to get that runner-up finish in Chico. He's had some top 5s on the year. Is Tom going to break through and get that first win? Tom's had several victories on these car tracks over the past couple of years. Still looking for that first victory on the season and to extend his points lead. But behind them, I mean, you just never know. We Aiden Roos-Evans was on Scotty Dubler's podcast not too long ago and seems very confident about this track. It's a place he's got laps on a sprint car, and he feels like he's going to win this race. And we saw how good he was in Sonoy, another one of those car tracks, winning the dash down there and fighting for a podium, ultimately coming home 4th down there. He's been strong at Sonoy the past couple of years. So he could very much factor into the win there. Riders who have grown up on these tracks, the likes of Braden Fanders, Evan Renshaw, Dalton Gautier. Gautier's coming back. He was absolutely going to be, in the hunt for a podium and maybe even a win in Sonoy before that violent crash. Same with Fanders. Those two were so fast down there. And this track, I just feel like, is going to race very similar to some of those tracks in Pennsylvania, and could be an opportunity for Gautier to pick up another win. Could be an opportunity for Fanders and Renshaw to hop on the podium. Maybe even they can test for a win. Fanders didn't have the best California, swing, but I just think this track is going to play a little more into his wheelhouse and something he's familiar with. So, those guys could factor in. Chad Coast has won on these car tracks before, and he got his first top 10 of the year out there in California and was running up in that pack for a little bit before, dropping back into a 8th place finish toward the end of that race. Hunter Bowers coming off his first top 5 of the year, his best result there, a 4th place. And then you have to look at the guy who's won the last 2 races, and that's Cage Tadman. And while Cage has never run at Lucas Oil before, he never had experience at Chico either. And Cage, if he qualifies, if Cage qualifies in the top 5 at Lucas Oil Speedway, that's going to be, I believe, very ominous for the rest of the field, because if Cage has got a front row start and a clean shot going into turn 1, I think he's going to hole shot, and I think he could very much run away with this race. So look for Tadman to be, if he's up there high on the qualifying order and has got a front row start in his heat race, I would have to put him as probably the favorite to win, because again, he's just riding such a high right now, and is just the start has been so crucial for him, getting out front early and being able to ride his own race and just drop these hammer laps early on and get away from sort of the dogfight that goes on behind them for the rest of the the rest of the running order. So look for Cage, if he qualifies well, to be a major factor and potentially get that 3rd win in a row. And I don't know that he's going to be a title contender after missing 3 rounds, sitting close to 40 points behind Tom, who I just don't foresee is going to have a bad race. But man, if there's a moment where Tom ends up outside the top 10 for some reason, and same with Chase, Cage throughout the year could sneak up into that title fight now that he's on board for the rest of the year. But there's another rider who is going to be making his long-awaited debut, and that is the Turner Racing rider of Walker Porter. And Walker got to spend some laps in Clarksville, Tennessee over the weekend, another clay car track, a little bit shorter to what he's going to see at Lucas Oil. But Walker, one of those high-profile amateur riders coming up that we've been waiting to see his expert debut, and we'll get to see it here in Missouri. And I think it's a track that could play to Walker's strengths as well, being from Alabama and running on a lot of these like Southeast clay tracks growing up. Walker is very, very skilled rider and has a great team behind him. I don't know that I want to say he's going to win in his debut like Cage did, but it would not surprise me at all to see Walker slot into a top 10 spot. But man, this singles class is just it's just been so unexpected this year. No surprise really that Cody, when he showed up at Daytona, won those 2 races, and it's just the way the field has sorted out. Like it looked like in Sonoy that Chase and Tom weren't going to be the factors for the win, and then they worked their way up from bad starting spots to finish 1-2, and then Cage winning both races out in California, and Chase finishing off the podium in one of those races. Same with Tom. So who knows what's going to happen when we head to Lucas Oil. This singles class is exciting, and it would not surprise me at all for us to see a first-time winner at Lucas Oil, just like it wouldn't surprise me if we see one of the normal suspects pick up a win there. I know that's not exactly a hot take, and ooh, wow, what a prediction you made there. I just don't know what's going to happen. The singles class is even more wide open than I thought it would be. Coming into this year, there's just so many talented riders, and we're definitely looking forward to Walker's debut and seeing if Cage can carry the momentum. And as this title race shakes out, and there's so many of these guys who are jockeying for position outside the top 3, and we'll see Evan Renshaw come back from his crash in California. How will he fare here heading into a track that I think could suit his skill set? Still looking for that first win of his singles career. And then, as we mentioned, Dalton Gauthier talking about getting back on the bike and getting back to the racetrack. And you just never, ever can count Dalton out, especially on a lot of these car tracks, short tracks, TTs. Some of his mile finishes have not been as stellar the past couple of years, but man, I just feel like that dude is going to be a player coming into this weekend. So many exciting things to look at coming into Lucas Oil. I'm excited to have another American Flat Track round to follow along with, and we'll see how everything plays out and what the title races look like as we come out of Lucas Oil and then head into a couple of down weeks for AFT before we get the Lima doubleheader with the debut of the Triple Challenge, and then the Amateur Nationals and DuQuoin Mile there toward the end of June and beginning of July before we get another lull. And maybe we get Sturgis, maybe we don't. There's a lot of stuff happening with that, and it's just to be determined at this point whether or not there's racing there at Sturgis Bike Week. So we'll just have to follow along and see what happens out there. But that's in the future. We'll worry about that when the time comes. We're just going to be locked in and enjoying every single second of the racing there in Missouri. Fans, make sure you get out there early. Go out there for practice and qualifying. Hang out during the fan walk. Get those pit passes. Go meet your favorite riders. Enjoy the fan Q&A where the riders come up and answer questions. You can ask them anything. Maybe keep it respectful, but those are super fun elements AFT has added into their program this year, and very, very enjoyable experience. So yeah, man, go out there, support this event. I would love to see this be a great success. There's a lot of stands there at Lucas Oil. That place, when it's packed out, looks awesome. So everybody in the Missouri area, please support this event. And in addition to that, coming up in a couple of weeks, round 3 of the Mission Foods CTR Flat Track Series up there at Triangle Motorcycle Club in Harpster, Ohio. A little cushion half-mile racing. So if some of you guys want to get geared up and have some extra laps before that Lima event, that's one you can put on your calendar as well. That same weekend, there's also an event going on in Canada, that Battle of the Border Match Point that Doug Lawrence is putting on. So I imagine some of the competition is going to be split between those 2 events, but 2 very exciting races to look at as we move beyond Lucas Oil, and then 2 big time events coming up after that national. So man, thank you guys so much for supporting this channel. Thank you so much for watching what we do. Please make sure that you're supporting those podcasts and YouTube channels that are doing stuff to bring content to this sport. I appreciate anytime Kolby Carlile reaches out to me and lets us record a Sideways podcast episode. Incredibly grateful to Corey Texture for reaching out and letting us play a small part on a couple of Tank Slapping podcast episodes. Scotty Dubler keeps rocking those Off the Groove podcasts every single Friday. Always look forward to Scotty's content when that's coming out. It's been a nice routine to have on Fridays. Thank you guys so much for checking out our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, we'd love if you to give us a subscribe, a like, a dislike, a comment, share if it's in your heart to do so. But if it's not, then hey, so be it. If you want to interact with us off of this platform, feel free to follow us on Instagram. It's at Flat Trak Flashback on Instagram, or shoot us an email, and the email address is flattrackflashback@gmail.com. Thank you guys again for supporting this, for watching this, for being part of this incredible Flat Track family. We love you all, and have a great weekend. Let's enjoy some American Flat Track racing, why don't we? Take care, everybody.